Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have you here. My name is Emanuela Ekanem. I'm an HR practitioner with about a decade experience in HR. I'm excited to learn from our presenter today. We will be talking about the new workplace. Who will take charge? That's the topic for today. Just before I go ahead to introduce our presenter to everybody, a few guides that we would work with. All microphones will be on mute, and while the presenter is on, kindly type your questions on the chat box, and as soon as he's done, I will read out those questions to the presenter. You would also have about a 5 minutes opportunity to unmute your mics after the raise of hand. You indicate that you have a question and then you raise your hand. We will allow that you unmute your mic and ask your questions, but that will be after the presentation. Our presentation will run for about 35 to 40 minutes. Okay, so I'll introduce our presenter for today. We have Mr. Wale Adediran in the house. Wale is a renowned HR practitioner with almost 3 decades of experience in HR. And this experience ranges from organizational development, reward management, employee and industrial relations, and almost every field of HR. Mr. Wale was trained initially as an engineer, and he started his career in Procter & Gamble, where he worked his way up to the position of Group Manager HR. At that time, he was responsible for leading the whole HR function in West Africa. Currently, Wale Adediran is the Group Human Resource Director for Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC and all of Flour Mills subsidiaries. He is also the President and Chairman of the Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, CIPM. We are excited to have you here, Mr. Wale. You have the floor now. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening. I'm excited to be here as well. Thanks for that introduction, though I'm not sure you're introducing the Wale that I know, because this Wale is just a village boy that is privileged to meet the right people at some point in life and got himself into engineering, and now I've been in HR for some time. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to meet everyone. I would love to share my screen with you because the session is intended to be interactive and discussion driven. It's a question that all of us together as a team will try to answer. And the question is, the new workplace, who will take charge? So this is like blowing the whistle for a race to start. And the race is about who takes charge of the new workplace. So in going through the effort to answer this question, I hope at the end of the day, each and every one of us will have our own answers. And maybe we might just agree, we might all agree to one answer. So I have an outline here. PT, I'm still trying to share my screen with you so you can see it. Okay, I guess my screen is already shared. Thank you. I wish I can be in control, because I would like to move to slide 2. Thank you. So the outline has just 4 steps. The most important is the last one, which is the Q&A. By the way, Q&A and discussion. That's what that will be. So what I'm going to tell you and what I will hope to hear from you is, first, my own perspective on what the new workplace is or looks like. And secondly, the changes that that new workplace has brought to people and organization, or that that new workplace demands from the operating models for people and organizations. And based on the demanded changes, we will all together look at what it will take to lead in such a changed operating model of people and organizations. So that will help us in answering the question. Before I go to the next slide, just on this same slide, the first thing that should jump out at us, especially HR practitioners that are on this webinar, is we are talking about the workplace. That should be the purview of the HR practitioner. It should be the responsibility mainly of the HR practitioner. The HR practitioner should lead in managing that workplace. So the question of who leads in the new workplace should have an obvious answer. Okay, maybe and maybe not. By the time we go through, especially the changes that will manifest or that is already manifesting in the operating model in the organization and that will be required, maybe our answer will still remain the same, that, oh, it should be HR practitioners, or it should be the entire management team, or. The most important thing is not to land one position or one role or one person or profession that should lead in the new workplace. The most important thing is to have a clear understanding of the changes that we will yet see, the ones that are already happening, and the quality that will be required, the attributes that will be required to manage or to lead in such a changed environment. So that's the whole essence of this conversation. And it's for 45 minutes, out of which about 10 minutes have been taken. So let's see what we can do in the next half hour. I go to the next slide now. Let's look at the workplace, okay? The new workplace. By the way, this new workplace is still unfolding. So we cannot say for sure that that new workplace is there. I fully agree that the future is there. We've been talking of future of work, where we explain that the workforce, the workplace, and work itself were changing, and we're looking at that component now, the workplace. So what are the changes that we've been seeing? And what are the changes that will still manifest? I will concentrate a lot on the changes we've seen. And in doing that, I will challenge anyone that would feel or claim that he or she had not seen any changes in the workplace pre-December 2019 and now, okay? Between December 2019 and today, we've seen a massive disruption in the way we live our lives, especially the way we work, and most especially where we work. So the new workplace is now so concerned about preventing infections, not just COVID-19. COVID-19 just happens to be the forerunner. I'm sorry, I don't pray for it, but that is our reality. A lot of pandemics will follow. This won't be the only one. The last one was back in 1920-ish. And now in 2020, we're having this. So don't assume that the next one will be another 80 or 100 years away. It could be much sooner, because that VUCA thing is now coming to life with the experiences we've had, especially in Nigeria here, from March till date, and in the rest of the world from early January to date. So when we talk about VUCA, you know, that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, they sounded like big grammar some months ago. But right now, we will not acknowledge the volatility that we have in the workplace, the uncertainty that it brings with it, the complexity of working. As I speak with you, I'm not sitting in my office. I have to stop by at a hotel to just use a space, you know, a room, in order to participate in this webinar. And I'm on official assignment. I'm on the move. So this is my office right now as we speak. Offices or workplaces are fast becoming an assemblage of tools and apps. So just as the new workplace is so concerned now about preventing infection, avoiding transmission of infections or spread of infection in the workplace, now tools, mobile applications are fast becoming the new workplaces. Now, the question may arise as to how applicable would that be for manufacturing organizations, where people have to go to the factory, load materials, and so on and so forth. Now, even for those who work in offices, can they totally avoid going to their offices, the central place that we've always known as offices, to work and collaborate with colleagues? The answer is, it's not going to be absolute, but whether we like it or not, even for those who work in factories, there will be innovations now. There will be creative solutions now that will ensure they can operate the factories remotely most of the time. As we speak today, there are difficult places where work should be done, and for human beings, it's going to be too risky to send people there to do the work. We've managed to create robots and other devices that could access those high-risk areas and carry out the work. They may not have emotions and feelings like us humans, but some complex humanoids are being developed now that will be able to maybe do a little bit more than the regular robots. The point I'm making is, as the world evolves, as diseases, abound, as pandemics unfold, albeit probably more frequently than it had been in the history of mankind, man will be forced to develop means by which people can work virtually, remotely, most of the time, even for factories. I recall that some more than 10 years ago, there was this discussion around light out factories, factories where the workers will only go for a few hours to load materials that can last for the next 24 hours. And once they load the materials and program the equipment, they switch off the light, the equipment will be powered, and the line will run automatically without human intervention. And they can now monitor, via video remotely from wherever they live, while the line continues to churn out products, palletize them, and there will be runways that will, with some robots that will move the pallets from the factory floor to the warehouse. And this was an idea that was tested 20 years ago, not on a very large scale. But the point I'm making is, the more we have this kind of challenge that we have today, the more human beings will be forced to develop means by which work can be done remotely, virtually, irrespective of whether it's a factory or an office. Every human venture that seeks to provide products and services would somehow, as we go on in life, in the history of mankind, be developed to connect the mental and physical resources of man in a way that avoid with other human beings, especially if we continue to face kind of challenge. So offices are fast becoming tools and apps, mobile, multiple platforms and devices, like the one I'm using now. And they are becoming the new workplaces, and it's chaotic. It's chaotic, and if you do not agree with me, just check out, for those of you that have been working from home, the spouse is also working from home. The children are also at home, continuing their schooling, remotely. So tele-education. And everybody is on the same Wi-Fi or different Wi-Fis, but they're in the same physical space. And then you have kiddies, who are, for those who do, who are still underage and will normally be at daycares or some other centers, who are now at home. And you see a lot of video bombing, with those kids showing up when daddy or mommy is having some serious meetings or webinars. It could really be chaotic. Plus the fact that it's difficult to even draw the boundary in terms of time. I see a lot of webinars all over the place for 7 p.m. People are having webinars as late as 8, 10 p.m. The life that we used to know, the workplace that used to be locked in the evening when everybody goes home, except for factories that are around 24/7, are now shifted to our own devices and mobile platforms, and they are open sometimes till the dead of the night. The backbone for doing all of this is still fragile, especially for Nigeria, for Africa. And the reach is not as adequate as it should be if it will become the new normal. People say, oh, this is the new normal. And I tell them, yes, in the urban areas. You go outside of Lagos, outside of Abuja, outside of the Ibadans and Abeokutas of this world, you won't go too far before you discover that life is still primitive. Last but not the least, it's really lonely. This session we're holding with about 159, 160 of us will be face to face. Then I can relate with real human beings. I can go beyond looking for your pictures or videos on the platform and see the you. I can compare my short height with yours. There are things that, we just can't wish away. We are social animals. We are relational. Relating with your picture or your video cannot be compared with relating with you. So that's the new workplace. It's a lonely place to be. It's not an adequate space for everyone. It's very fragile because the backbone, as I'm speaking with you now, the line could go off. That won't happen if we're face to face with one another. Please, can you move us to the next slide? Thank you. So now, what are the changes that comes with this? What are the changes that come with this description that I've given, both for people and for organization? The first reality is that VUCA, as I explained earlier on, is here with us, and it will continue. Before COVID goes away, the projection is, okay, maybe in under 15, 18 months, and there could be different, peaks and different surges and different waves. We are praying to God that lives will be saved. But whether we like it or not, that's our new reality. And it's bringing all the complexities, the ambiguity. So that future we've been preaching, I recall last year at our annual national conference in Abuja for Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, we talked about disruption, change again. Look, we were even looking at digital disruption. We thought digital was a disruption, but digital is actually an empowerment that enables us to operate now. the phase of the reality we are facing. Assuming there's no digital power, there is no digital platform for work to continue as we have continued now, what would have happened to the world economy? Even at that, because it's novel, economies are still suffering. However, it will have been much worse if we do not have the digital. So we talked about digital disruption. We talked about how there is going to be disruption and we need to change our game. That change has been forced on us now. That future that we're projecting will come between 2020 and 2025 is here in 2020. So whatever operating model and processes we've had in the past, they are fast becoming obsolete. Those disciplinary protocols and policies that we had in our workplaces, they are fast becoming obsolete. In fact, you mentioned some things, around photocopying, cyclostyling that we used to control, the number of hours you can spend on the internet and so on and so forth. They are fast becoming obsolete because the operating model was premised on some foundations that had shifted. It's no longer about work done. It's now about value creation. People talk about, how do I manage my people remotely, virtually? My people are working virtually, how do I manage them? You manage them through the value they create. It's no longer about, are they at work? Are they not at work? At the initial stage, when we established the protocol for working virtually, we said, when you start your day, sign in on Microsoft Teams, which is the space that we use in my office, so that your line manager sees that you've signed in. And I get a lot of greetings from my colleagues. Wale, I'm online, I'm at work. So good morning, well done. The guy is actually at work before he switched on the Microsoft team. He's been taking calls on his phone, he's been responding to emails on his phone. So it's no longer about work done, it's about the value you create. So we give you a project. For instance, we tell you, develop a protocol for us to manage anyone that becomes COVID-19 positive. The value you are creating is not the fact that you sign on to Microsoft Teams at 9 a.m. and you signed off at 9 p.m. The value you create is give me the protocol, because I'm not with you. It's unlike before, you monitor people and look over their shoulder and you ask them, what are you doing on your screen? You are chatting with friends on your laptop instead of working. There's nobody there to supervise you to do all of that anymore. So we need skills to be able to do time and motion study, to know how long it will take to develop a protocol, how long it will take to build a particular development program, and so on and so forth. So it's about value creation. And like I said before, it's not the place anymore. It's the tool now, or the assemblage of gadgets that constitute the workplace. My workplace as we speak right now is this laptop, my Wi-Fi device, and the power bank that's supporting them. That's my workplace. So things are changing. Could you please scroll down? So in terms of the organization must have a new model, a new operating model for managing work, for scheduling work, for assessing work, for assessing value. It's about value, for enforcing discipline. Then these changes will come at the pace that digital advances. So when you have new digital technology, new app, new software, as those softwares come, unveiled, as those apps come, become available, the way you work, the operating model for the organization will also change, because you don't want to be the one left behind. If you want to get stuck to the skills and the abilities you have over the years pre-December 2019, you will become obsolete very fast. So the changes will be so accelerated that organizations that do not have the capacity to maintain their knowledge of what is going on out there on a daily basis and be agile to adapt, they will become obsolete. They will be left far behind. Please, can you go to the next slide? Let's talk about the changes around people now. Because as organizations are experiencing changes, people are also experiencing changes. Most of the issues are around people. So the solutions should target those who are vulnerable, those who are impacted the most by the changes. I'll give you an example. I have a plantation where we grow sugar cane and then we extract sugar from raw sugar from it. Most of those people do not speak to Renchi. Some of them cannot use the mobile apps. Some of them, I mean. Now, with the banking system going the way it's going, online banking is no longer for the elites. I need to think of my people from the most junior to the most senior and scan through their vulnerability, not only in terms of medical risk, but also in terms of financial risk, in terms of emotional and social challenges that they will face. Because it is when they are both physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially fit that they can deliver value. So we need to start thinking of putting in place some ways to support those who are vulnerable. The environment around them is changing very fast, and they are changing as well. You can imagine what happens to not just your employee, but those who depend on your employees, and they are resident in zones that are endemic with all kinds of medical challenges, especially this pandemic, whether you like it or not. If I have people at home who are battling for their lives, there's no way I can concentrate on work. So when we think of what to do, for instance, with this pandemic, it's not just about protecting them when they are at the office. We need to think, when they leave the office, where do they go? How do they get to where they are going from the office? Is it through public transport? And what happens in those public transports? And when they get home, what do they meet at home? Do they have the elderly they have to care for? Do they have those children that have been sent away from school now that they need to care for? Why we are not treating them as kids? Why they still need to take responsibility for what they have to be accountable for as adults, what is personal to them? We need to think of the limitation of what they can do on their own. Because whether we like it or not, no one planned for this. So those things that we know that in all sincerity they can't do on their own, we need to work with them to manage it. Otherwise, you will not have 10% of them at work. The remaining 90% will concentrate on the life and death issues that they are facing or that their dependents are facing. So our role is to connect their physical and mental resources with those of their colleagues in a way that will ensure they can collaborate and deliver value to the business without physically connecting. That is the role that leaders must play at this time, because those are the changes that people are going through. I'm connecting with all of you now to create a service value, and that's the value of provoking our thoughts so that we are able to together come to the realization of the changes that we're having in our workplaces and with our people, so that at the end of the day, we will all know there's a need to shift the kind of leadership that's required for value to still be delivered to our different businesses. So I go to the last slide now, or the semi-last slide, which is now to talk about what is required to lead in this kind or in this situation. Well, like I said earlier on, this pandemic is not going to be one of. There will be others. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of our human life now. So we need leaders that can respond to global pandemic. Global pandemic representing the kind of volatility, the kind of uncertainty that the world will continue to face in the next couple of decades or centuries, until we discover the magic for people not to be sick. Okay? But for now, here we are. We need leadership that will preserve the continuity of the business. The business cannot be preserved, the continuity of the business cannot be defended if the components that run the business cannot be secured. And the most important component is the human resources. That's why most organizations will say people are our most important or most valued asset. So this is a time for organization or an organization leadership to really live that mantra. If you ask me, I don't know how many organizations will pass that test at this time. Leadership that will protect the total well-being of their human resources, of their people. And not just their people, by extension, those dependents of their people. So we're talking of physical, mental, social, emotional, and so on and so forth. And in this period of social distancing does not make for good social well-being. So we need to come up with creative solutions, maybe virtual coffee time with one another, chat time, and so on, and some kind of, token to make up for it. It will not fully make up for it, but it will help. This is the time for leaders and all our people to be tech savvy. We have to be hungry learners. We have to be agile. We have to be adaptable. I can see some hands raised, 3 of them. I will come to you. Just give me just 1 more minute. Well, I said the kind of leaders we need at this time will not be leaders that are limited by age ranges. Some job adverts will come out and say, oh, the applicants should not be older than 27 years. Or if you are, okay. I hope you can hear me. 4 participants raising their hands, please. Chat room. Okay, if you raise your hand, please, you can just drop a word in the chat room. Or you can't hear. All right. How many people cannot hear? All right, I'm sure the organizers will take care of that. I hope the others can hear me. So I can hear. Thank you. Thank you. So the kind of leadership we need in this new phase we're facing are leaders that are not restricted by their ages. They can be as old as Donald Trump or be as young as Mark Zuckerberg. What is important is we need leaders that are tech savvy, that are humble, that have empathy, and are agile. That's what we need going into the future. And if you ask me, leaders that believe nothing is impossible. Okay? And that takes me to the next and the last slide before I now involve you. So, given the picture that we have seen, of what we are going through now and the implication, the change that this brings with it for our organizations and for our people. The question to us now is, who will take the lead? Is it people in a particular profession, like we say? Is it HR practitioners? Is it some kind of persons in some sectors? Or sometimes people say, oh, people in the digital world are the future of organizations and businesses. And I say, no. It is the hungry learner that is willing to learn about what is changing and what is available out there to deal with them that will lead us into the future. They have to be tech savvy. They have to be hungry. They have to learn daily. They must have empathy. They must be humble, humility. And I'm talking of professional humility here. The mindset that doesn't assume, I know it all, I've done it over and over again, and so on and so forth. But a mindset that knows that what I knew yesterday will not be sufficient for today. Thank you very much. Questions? Open now.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. It's been a time indeed. I learned, as you've just said, humility and vulnerability, we must be ready to learn even from those that we are trying to manage from an HR point. Thank you, sir. We've got 3 people with their hands raised. So Idara, you are allowed to talk as quickly as you can. Please go ahead. Unmute your mic, Idara, and go ahead with your questions. We need to be 30 seconds fast with this. Idara, can you hear? Great, we see you, we hear you. Go ahead.
I actually raised my hand at but I just want to thank the Wale quite and for us.
So we can't hear you clearly.
Hello.
Okay, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it sounds better.
Okay. So, like I was saying, I'm thanking Mr. Wale for the informative session. Okay. I was saying that I actually raised my hand much earlier when I was just at the beginning, just to see whether I had connected. But yes, I just wanted to ask, like, yeah, we had mentioned most of the organizations are working remotely, but he had mentioned that there are some that, like essential services, that work for a petroleum marketing company, and like retail stations are having to have people who are still physically in their organization. So how would we incorporate the whole new normal into our organization? I don't know if you can throw more light.
Okay, Idara, I didn't get your question completely. How do we incorporate what?
I think I did. What Idara was asking is for a business, petroleum marketing, where the attendants will have to be at the pump to dispense fuel for customers and collect money. How would they bring virtual work? Or better still, because virtual is a solution, but the problem you're trying to solve is how would they make these attendants still deliver value of helping them to sell fuel without having contact that can expose them to infections and future pandemics. Did I get your question correctly, Idara?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Maybe we should take a few more because some can be aligned, then I can answer.
Okay, we have, I hope I get this pronunciation correct, Voke or Voke. Please go ahead with your question quickly. Hello. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure that person is there. Isoboye, are you there? Please go ahead. Isoboye Amakri, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great, we can hear you now.
Surprisingly, you're the first person calling my name correctly.
Yay.
Thank you. All right. I first of all want to say lovely, lovely session. Now, based on what the presenter has presented, what we're seeing here is a business changing from what we know it to be,
Absolutely.
from profit making to value creation. From profit making to value creation. You know, when you look at business from the perspective of profit, you don't pay attention to your team per se. You know, all you want to do is to get the best to make the high-end profit. But when you're talking about value, it means you need to pay so much attention to those people who are driving the processes. And we always hear this saying, oh, our greatest assets are the human resource. But more often than not, what I come to see when we have issues like this, the first thing most management go for is that same asset that you say is your, the highest value creation, creating asset for you. You caught your human resource and all that. The question is now, how do we balance from profit making to value creation? Thank you.
Thank you, Isoboye. Good question. Mr. Wale, may I read another third and fourth question before you
Please
go
go
ahead?
ahead. Yes.
Okay. There's a question on the chat box that says, how can HR leaders better manage the integration of the various generations in a virtual work ecosystem, especially where you have more baby boomers and fewer millennials and zillennials?
Wow.
Wow.
All right.
Wow. Okay.
So let me start with Sidara's question, which is how do we respond to these changes and protect our people who work as pump attendants and still ensure they deliver value without getting exposed to pandemic now and in the future? The answer to that is technical. And I'm not a technical expert, even though I'm an engineer. I'm not a technical expert in your line of business. But what I can say is this: where there is a will, there is always a way. If you know where you are going, it's only a matter of time before you find a great way to get there. I think starting point is your leadership have to be empathetic to know that the fact that they are not the attendants and they can work from their cozy offices and homes does not mean that those attendants do not desire to have such kind of covering or protection or opportunity too. So I have seen, as an engineer, I have seen self-serviced pumping stations. I have seen a whole manufacturing process that is controlled from a control room where you have just a number of screens and CPUs and then some keypads that people can press a number of buttons and open valves and close the valves. So if that is possible in the complex oil and gas environment, in the edible oil refinery, and one of our subsidiaries has that, in the breweries, you know, where the processes involved in making those products are managed and controlled by opening and closing valves of vessels remotely from a control room, from a computer room. I strongly believe that there are options out there that our service industry in the petroleum sector, downstream petroleum sector, can begin to evaluate to protect their people from getting exposed, such that they can still add value without having physical contact and being exposed to risk of future pandemics. And it's not something that will happen overnight. It will happen over time. For the developed world where there is CCTV camera and good policing system, they don't even put anybody there. The guy sits in an office with some glass window. He could see what is going on outside, and he has to sell maybe a few groceries, like a mini market in there, while the buyer will go and self-dispense the fuel and pay with card. If we can't even go that far in Nigeria for now, and especially so that we can even provide job for our people, there's nothing stopping us from exploring the control room approach. And I know there will be so many other approaches. I don't want to dabble into that technical space. I'm not the expert, but I know as an engineer there are solutions that can be adopted. And as this the environment becomes more and more challenging for physical contact, your leadership will have to look at the option that can help. I then go to the question regarding how do we balance, I don't want to murder the name. I listened over and over when she pronounced it, but I will be careful not to spoil that good result. So let me go to the question itself. It's about how do we balance value creation and profit making? Again, it's somehow related to the first question I answered, because I could see that that's the angle from where you're coming. Smart businesses, we know that sacrificing immediate and short-term profiting for a longer term, existence and profitable existence makes a lot of business sense. Businesses that have been all about immediate gratification of profit making in some decades past, that have been part of Fortune 500 some 100 years ago, many of them are not existing anymore. And the main reason being that they over-prioritize short-term profiting at the expense of long-term existence. Truly, the most valuable asset of any organization are the people. And any business that invests in them will enjoy longer-term existence and profitability. So it's about getting the right leaders. It's about staffing your leadership team with people that have empathy, people that have longer-term thinking. And believe me, there are various criteria you can use, as an assessor to identify such people. I mean, one of them, by the time they tell you their life story and you could see their penchant for immediate gratification, then you will know that this is not the kind of person that will think long-term for your business if they cannot think long-term for themselves. People that do not show empathy for their own immediate dependents will not show empathy for those that are not related to them, and so on and so forth. But that's a different subject. My point being, it's about having the right leadership with long-term thinking, long-term mindset for you to be able to sustain, the balance between instant profit and value creation on a longer term.
Okay. I have just 1 minute left to close.
The most challenging question is the last one.
Generation.
Sorry?
How you manage different generations in a virtual
how you manage different generations. Again, I think we need to manage by value creation. We need to manage by competency that the job requires. We need to ensure that the focus is on the business objectives. We need to also ensure, just the same way we have inclusion programs for people with different abilities and disabilities, we must have inclusion programs for people with different gender, people with different backgrounds. The same thing applies to age groups. So those that could not climb stairs, you cannot allocate them to a third floor office where there are no lifts, for instance, you know, and so on and so forth. So it's about being aware of those differences and making provision to be inclusive in a way that does not compromise merit and competence in delivering objectives and in being assigned to manage a role. I believe my time is up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wale. This is impactful. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. And thank you all 180 participants that were here. We've come to the close of this webinar. It was really insightful. We hope to see you in the next one that is starting in a few minutes from now. Thank you, Mr. Wale. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, guys. God bless you.